What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and we have our Week 9 College Football Playoff Eliminator. We're going to update the College Football Playoff race, which is starting to change a little bit. We didn't see any huge upsets or anything where a team that was like in the top 4 or 5 lost. We saw Clemson a little bit shaky. That might affect the race a little bit, even though they did win. But not anything huge in the playoff race, but definitely some more teams that have now been eliminated. We haven't seen the Pac12 yet. They'll be joining us this weekend. So we'll have 6 teams that are 1-0 at the end of the weekend, and then 6 teams that are already eliminated, because you're not getting in the playoff out of the Pac12 if you have a loss. So here are the teams that have already been eliminated. We've already eliminated all of these teams. And I say it, all the non-Power 5 teams except for Cincinnati. They're the one team that I think has a chance to still get in. I know there's a lot of talk about BYU and Liberty. Let's see what they do this weekend. If BYU can convincingly beat Boise State, if Liberty can convincingly beat Virginia Tech, then maybe we'll start talking about those 2 teams. But until then, I'm going to hold off on those teams. Maybe we bring them back from the dead. BYU, I think, has a great chance to win. Liberty might be a little bit tougher. But again, all these teams have already been eliminated. We're now into November, and we have already eliminated, I think, over half the teams here. Well, if you count the non-Power 5 teams, well over half of the teams in college football. So how about the new eliminations this week? Illinois, they're now 0-2. Iowa, they're 0-2. Both of these teams eliminated. A lot of people, or some people, were high on Iowa. I was not. I'm not surprised at all that they are now 0-2. Minnesota, they look terrible this past weekend against, or Friday night, I think, against Maryland. They're now 0-2, lost to Michigan. This team defensively is just not good at all. I knew, they lost a lot on that side of the ball, but I didn't expect it to be this big of a drop-off. The offense still has some talent, but if that defense continues to play that poorly, it's going to be a rough season for Minnesota. North Carolina is now eliminated. This was a bit of a surprise for me. I thought Virginia would play them pretty tough, but I didn't think they'd pull off that upset. North Carolina now, they're out of it. They still have to play Notre Dame and Miami. If they were able to win both of those games and then maybe upset Clemson in the ACC Championship, maybe there's a path for North Carolina. I don't know if that would be enough, though. 2 losses to teams that probably will not finish in the top 25. I think that's too much. I think North Carolina is now out of it. Penn State, they're 0-2. I think they're out of it as well. Played Ohio State fairly tough, probably tougher than anyone will play them in the regular season this year, but the loss to Indiana really hurt them, and with 2 losses, you're not going to get in out of the Big Ten. Like I said, no 1-loss Pac-12 team is going to get in. No 2-loss Big Ten team is going to get in. All right, how about 1 loss and probably out? These teams, it's very unlikely that they would make it into the college football playoff. We start with Maryland, Michigan State, Rutgers, Nebraska. Those teams were never really contenders to begin with. Michigan is another team I think you can put here, just because they're probably not going to beat Ohio State. That would be a shocker if they were able to upset Ohio State. They have to play Indiana. That'll be a tough game this weekend. May not play Wisconsin. Who knows what's going to happen with that game. We don't know if Wisconsin's ever going to be able to play again. So I just don't think Michigan, yeah, if they win out, they have a chance to get in, but I just don't see them beating Ohio State. So that's why I put them in the probably out category. So how about the teams with 1 loss that are still contenders? Florida, Georgia, Miami, Oklahoma State, Texas A&M. Obviously, one of these teams will be eliminated when Florida and Georgia play this weekend. A huge game. The winner of that game, if they can go on and maybe upset Alabama in the SEC Championship, they obviously would get in, but it's unlikely. I just don't know that they're going to beat Alabama. They have a chance, I guess. Bama has not looked unbeatable. Remember, Ole Miss played them tough. So there's a path, or obviously there is a path, but there's a chance, I would say, that one of these teams could get in. But it's, if you lose this weekend, you're out. So that's a huge game, huge game. It's going to determine the SEC East. Miami is still alive. Nobody's really talking about Miami. I know they lost to Clemson, but if they win out, they'll get another shot at Clemson. And if they win that game, they're in the college football playoff. Oklahoma State, I know they just lost, but if they went out and win the Big 12, I think there's a great opportunity for them to get in. I think it's going to be tough for them to win out just with all the games they still have in front of them. Kansas State this weekend. They've got Oklahoma. It's going to be tough. And then, of course, a Big 12 championship game. And then Texas A&M. I've been talking about this team, and people laughed at me. Do you believe now that Texas A&M might have a chance to make the college football playoff? You look at the rest of their schedule. I think they can beat Tennessee. I think they can beat Ole Miss. I think they can beat all these teams left, Auburn might be the toughest game left for them. LSU's looking terrible right now. That Texas A&M Auburn game, I keep saying it, that's going to be a huge game for the Aggies. If they're able to run the table, finish with one loss, an early season loss to Alabama, who is number 1 or number 2 in the playoff ranks, yeah, A&M, they're going to have a great argument, and I think they could be the team that sneaks into the college football playoff. Here are the teams that are still unbeaten. Again, only looking at the Power 5 teams and the American. Cincinnati is there, Alabama, Clemson, Indiana, Northwestern, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Purdue, and Wisconsin. Wisconsin may stay undefeated if they don't play again. I really hope they get to play. It would be nice to see them play Michigan. I think it's kind of unlikely, but who knows? Maybe they'll be able to play that game. Northwestern has been a bit of a surprise. Indiana has been a bit of a surprise. Purdue is 2-0. These are interesting teams that probably are not really playoff contenders, but hey, they're unbeaten up to this point, and we'll see if they can continue that. Obviously, between Clemson and Notre Dame, one of those teams will be off of the unbeaten list after this weekend. And yet to play, we have the Pac-12. That's it. Only conference now that has not played in the Power 5. The MAC has not played. They'll start tomorrow night, so the MAC will begin, and then the Pac-12 will begin Saturday, and then they will be in this playoff discussion. Some people think no matter what happens in the Pac-12, no Pac-12 team deserves to make the playoff. I think you probably will not get in if you go undefeated in the Pac-12, but if there is enough that happens and a team is impressive enough in their wins, you could see a Pac-12 team in the playoff this year. So I haven't really changed the bracket. It's still Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State. I think these are the 3 teams. If Clemson continues to struggle, if they have some close games down the stretch, even if they go undefeated, I think Alabama could pass them. But I'm not going to overreact to that one game against Boston College. They could come back and beat Notre Dame by 20, and then you're going to tell me that the committee wouldn't have Clemson ahead of Alabama. And now I think Clemson, for now, will stay in that number 1 spot, but it could definitely be Alabama. It's definitely close. Ohio State, I think, will be at number 3 just because they don't play as many games. They're not going to have the resume. But these are the top 3 teams. I don't think there's really much argument there. You could maybe make an argument that Notre Dame is in this discussion. If they're able to beat Clemson, obviously that would change things. You would probably put Notre Dame into the top 3, and Clemson would come out of the top 3. Would Clemson go to number 4? Or maybe that's a team like Georgia. It's hard to say. That is just going to be a huge game on Saturday. Looking forward to seeing what happens in that one. But these are the 3 teams still. I still think Clemson is in this category, and I think if they can beat Notre Dame and get things going and blow out some of these teams down the stretch, they'll get that number 1 spot. But here is the race for the number 4 spot. This is the drama this year. Who is going to beat number 4? All right, so I think this is not a prediction. I'm not predicting these teams in any certain order. It's really just based off of the path that they have and what I think is most likely to happen based off of that path. The favorites kind of just winning each game. Texas A&M, to me, has the best path. The toughest game, like I said, on their schedule is probably Auburn, and they're barely a top 25 team. Who else is going to beat Texas A&M? It's going to take an upset for the Aggies to lose a game, even against Auburn. I think they might be favored in that game as well. So that tells me, yeah, Texas A&M is the favorite for that number 4 spot right now. And if they win out, I think they probably get it. It'll be a really interesting debate if Texas A&M finishes with 1 loss and Cincinnati goes undefeated. I kind of think Cincinnati would get in that scenario, but you look at the schedule for Cincinnati, it's going to be pretty tough down the stretch. You've still got UCF, still got Tulsa. You'll have an American Championship game. I know they've been blowing teams out as of late, but I think it'll be tough for them to run that table. So to me, Texas A&M, Cincinnati, it looks like one of those 2 teams might just get that number 4 spot. Then you have Georgia and Florida. I just think it's going to be tough for whoever wins this game to go on and beat Alabama. That's why I don't have them higher than Texas A&M or Cincinnati. And then Oklahoma State is at number 4. I still think if they win out, they'll have a really good shot to get in. It's going to be, what if we have a 1-loss Texas A&M, an undefeated Cincinnati, a 1-loss Big 12 champion in Oklahoma State? Who do you put in? You can make an argument for Cincinnati. They're the only undefeated team. You can make an argument for Oklahoma State because they're a Power 5 conference champion. You can make an argument for Texas A&M because they play in the SEC. That would be a really interesting debate. I think the committee's hoping that does not happen. But Oklahoma State's still in this discussion. At number 5, Notre Dame and Miami, they continue to kind of move up. They're just kind of sneaking up this list. Miami's path is obviously a rematch win over Clemson. Notre Dame, they need to beat Clemson one of 2 times, or again, there is a way that maybe one of these teams could get in without even playing in the ACC Championship. If they win, both teams win every game on their schedule except for that Clemson game, it'll be a tie for number 2 in the ACC. So whoever does not go to the ACC Championship would still have just 1 loss, and maybe they could get in there with 1 loss without even playing in the ACC Championship. There's a path there. Notre Dame, I think, there's a better chance that they beat Clemson now. Before, I didn't really think they had much of a chance. I still kind of like Clemson in that game, but I think Notre Dame has a shot playing at home. No Trevor Lawrence. Injuries on defense for Clemson. So Notre Dame could maybe win that game, and even if they lose to Clemson in a rematch in the ACC Championship, they could still get that number 4 spot. Then you have Oregon or USC. If one of these 2 teams goes undefeated in the Pac-12, they would have a chance, but again, you need all these teams ahead of them to lose. And then there's Wisconsin, who's kind of a wild card right now. They're really the only team out of the Big Ten that I think could win it outside of Ohio State. But we don't know how many games they're even going to play, so I have no idea. I really don't see a second Big Ten team getting in there, but I'll put Wisconsin on this list for now. We'll see what happens going forward, but I would love to know what you guys think about the playoff race. Give me your comments down below. Thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned for more here on the SG1 Sports College Football Channel.